Hey folks, it's the Ukulele Doctor, and today I'm coming at you with a tutorial aimed at anyone who is looking to level up their skills at playing jazz or blues on the ukulele. And I'm not a professional music teacher, so take this with a grain of salt in terms of me passing on what I've learned, but I believe in working smarter and not harder, so I have some tips and tricks to pass on to you. Now, if you open a jazz songbook, you're going to see lots of varieties of diminished seventh chords. And I think those chords can be intimidating, hard to understand, and hard to play both. However, I want to pass on some tricks that make playing those chords easier for you. But let's just review for a minute what I mean when I talk about a diminished seventh. So here's two examples of two different varieties of diminished sevenths. And here. And then I'm just going to play you a brief passage from Blue Skies by Irving Berlin with chords straight out of my jazz songbook to give you an example of what these chords sound like in the context of a chord progression. And I'm going to be playing from the bridge of the song, and when you hear me say my how in the phrase my how they fly, you're going to be hearing these diminished seventh chords, the very same ones I just played for you. Noticing the days hurrying by, when you're in love, my how they fly. So you can hear that those chords have a more somber tone, more haunting, and they add a lot of nuance and beauty to the chord progression. And you will see them occasionally outside of jazz and blues. We just use them a lot more in those genres. But let's go to the piano and review what we mean in terms of music theory when we talk about diminished seventh chords. Okay, here we are at the piano, and I'm just going to demonstrate for you what I mean when I talk about diminished sevenths. So you may have learned at some point that a lot of chords can be thought of as stacks of different kinds of third intervals. So, for example, a minor chord is going to be a minor third with a major third on top of it. So C to E flat and E flat to G natural gives us C natural minor. Or if we reverse that and have a minor third on top of a major third, we go from C natural to E natural, from E natural to G. And that gives us C natural major. Now the diminished sevenths are similar, but there are two varieties. There is the half-diminished seventh and the fully diminished seventh. And the easiest way to find the half-diminished seventh is to just find the minor seventh and take the 5, that third note, down a half step. So let's imagine we were playing in the key of D major. The diminished chord we would expect to find in that key is going to be C sharp diminished. So we have C sharp, E natural, and G natural. And if we want to find the half-diminished sevenths, we just think about, okay, what is the minor seventh? That's a C sharp minor seventh. And if we want to get the half-diminished seventh, we just take that third note and drop it down, that fifth. So we have there a C sharp, an E natural, a G natural, and a B natural. And then if we want to get the fully diminished seventh, we just take that fourth note, that 7, and drop it down a half step. And there we have the C sharp, the E natural, the G natural, and the A sharp. So again, C sharp minor 7, C sharp half diminished 7, and C sharp fully diminished 7. Now, you might be thinking, okay, 2 different varieties of diminished 7s, and 12 different notes on which we can build them. Isn't that 24 different chords to learn? And the answer is no, because what we can do is take these 12 fully diminished 7s and group them into 3 groups of 4 chords. And the thing to understand is that every chord within a group is just a different inversion or different note ordering of the other chords within that group. So for example, C sharp fully diminished 7 is actually just an inversion of E natural fully diminished 7, which is actually just an inversion of G natural fully diminished 7, which is actually just an inversion of the A sharp fully diminished 7. So we have these 3 groups of 4 chords, and the important thing to recognize is that you're playing the same notes regardless of which note you start on of the 4 notes within that chord. Okay, now let's go back to the ukulele and think about how we can put this pattern into practice. Okay, now that we've covered the hard part, which is understanding the diminished 7ths conceptually, we can come back to the ukulele to learn the pattern for playing them, which is actually surprisingly easy. So the pattern is as follows. We just have to hold the 1st and 3rd strings 1 fret up from where we hold the 2nd and 4th strings. So for example here, I'm holding the 1st and 3rd strings on the 1st fret and leaving the 2nd and 4th strings open. We can take that pattern and move it up a half step. There I'm holding the 1st and 3rd strings on the 2nd fret and the 2nd and 4th strings on the 1st fret. One more time, I'm holding the 1st and 3rd strings on the 3rd fret and the 2nd and 4th strings on the 2nd fret. And we can continue that pattern on up the fretboard. Allowing us to ultimately get every inversion we might ever need of the fully diminished 7ths, but it's really those first 3 that you're going to need to use because those cover the 3 different groups I was telling you about. The important thing, though, is being able to look at a chord written on the page and figure out where to play this pattern to get that fully diminished 7th chord. And the answer is actually quite simple. You just look at what notes you're playing, and any note that you're playing with this pattern can be thought of as the root note of that fully diminished 7th chord. So for example, playing here, I know that I'm playing a G sharp. So if I see a G sharp fully diminished 7th, I play this. I know that I'm playing a D natural. So if I see a D natural fully diminished 7th, I play here. Same goes for this F natural and this B natural. So again, any note that you're playing with this pattern can be thought of as the root note in some inversion of this chord. And if you want to find the half-diminished 7th, just remember that the half-diminished seventh just has one note, one half step higher. You just have to figure out what that note is and move it one half step higher. And the way to figure that out is to figure out, okay, what is the root note? For example, if I saw a C-sharp fully diminished seventh and played this, I would know, if I thought about what notes I'm playing, that the A sharp here is going to be the next lowest note on the keyboard below the C sharp. So if I call this a C sharp fully diminished seventh and want to get to the C sharp half diminished seventh, or C minor 7 sharp 5, I just raise that 7 up a half note. So that's the half diminished, and that's the fully diminished. Same thing with other chords. Half diminished, fully diminished. Half diminished, fully diminished. Half diminished, fully diminished. So my hope is that after watching this tutorial, you feel empowered in your ability to play these chords when you see them without having to memorize a ton of different finger placements. All you need to do is memorize that one pattern for playing the fully diminished sevenths, and then move up and down to find the right placement for the chord you see written on the page. And then if you need a half diminished seventh, all you have to do is find the corresponding fully diminished seventh and move one note one half step up. Thanks for listening.